Hey everybody, welcome back to the video on my Storytime channel. So I'm continue reading the second book of Left Behind the Kids series, Second Chance. I'm on chapter 4 right now, Ordeal at O'Hare. I'm going to read that chapter. So yeah, enjoy. This series is awesome. I recommend the series to children for entertainment purposes, not for the religious aspects of it, but it is entertaining, you got to give it credit for that. Kids might find the series entertaining and be enthralled by the events of the series and the action, regardless of how you feel about the spiritual aspects of the series. The series is entertainment, and it has like a lot of action in it that I totally recommend for people that are interested, in finding something to pass the time, Just something I personally believe anyway. But let's continue reading. The second book of Left Behind the Kids series, Second Chance, Chapter 4, Ordeal at O'Hare. Judd and Vicky reached the entrance road to O'Hare just past Mannheim Road late in the evening, about the time Lionel and Ryan were heading back to Mount Prospect from Chicago. Judd had never seen anything like this in his life. He and Vicky found themselves wandering along with hundreds, maybe thousands of others who were coming to or going from the giant airport for a variety of reasons. Many, it was clear, had come to O'Hare hoping to find a friend or a loved one alive. The people coming the other way, those exiting the airport, had either been unable to get their cars out of the parking garage or unable to find a taxi or limo to get them home. It was hard for Judd to imagine how anyone could hope to get out of this place in a car. Traffic was jammed in and out of the place, and tempers ran short. All around them, Judd and Vicky could hear people shouting at each other. The occasional limo or cab would break from the pack and race across the grassy median and up onto Mannheim Road or another artery. As they got closer and closer to the massive parking garage, Judd struck up conversations with others who are on missions similar to his. Doesn't look like we're going to be getting our cars out of here tonight, a middle-aged man growls to Judd. Nope, Judd said, but I have to try anyway. I see lots of activity up there, cranes, tow trucks, cops. I don't know what they're doing. I don't either, Judd said. I parked at the end of one row, so maybe I'll get lucky. Don't count on it. At the parking garage, cops with bullhorns were stationed at the entrance. Judd heard one explain the process. You're free to go sit in your car if you wish, the cop said, but don't start the engine until you get a clear pathway to the exit ramp. So far, only those parked at levels 1 and 2 have even a chance of getting out into the traffic jam here, and you can see you're not going to get far anyway. I'm on level 2, Judd told Vicky. Maybe they've cleared the way for me. The cops told everyone the elevators were not running, the pay boats were wide open, and that any looters or suspected car thieves would be shot on sight. All over the multi-story garage, workers labored to clear cars whose drivers had disappeared. Hundreds of cars had been coming into and leaving the garage when the rapture had occurred. A little less than a quarter of those vehicles had been manned by people who are now gone. Their cars had continued until they struck at other cars and walls, and there they sat, idling until they were out of gas. Some of those cars apparently had full tanks of gas, and they were still running. Workers were able to move them. The biggest job is finding a place for all those empty cars just to get them out of the way. A long walkway sneaked from the garage to the taxi cab staging area, which was empty. All the cabs and cabbies swarmed departure and arrival levels, seeking riders. Of course, many of the cab drivers disappeared as well. Fortunately, with so many others in the immediate area when that happened, this resulted in just a bunch of fender benders. Other cabbies had grabbed those idling hacks and gotten them out of the way. Judd showed to see and Vicky walk through the garage, passing cars in full suits of clothes in the driver's seat. You saw the occasional car with a stunned or weeping person who was sitting atop someone else's clothes, trying to maneuver the car out of the tangled mess. Everywhere, workers are adding a gallon or two of gas to cars that idled their fuel away. The workers all wore surgical gloves and masks, no one knowing what germs or diseases might have been left by whatever it was that had made these people disappear. Judd knew there was nothing to be afraid of, but he couldn't blame the emergency personnel for being careful. At one end of the parking garage, a huge crane had been brought in, probably from a construction site at the airport. It was being used to lift cars over the guardrail and set them gently down in an area near the end of the garage. When Judd found his father's car at the end of one row, he realized he was not in an advantageous position. 4 cars blocked his, and in the row he would have to reach to get to the exit. Workers were laboring over a gridlock of steel. A Chevy Blazer whose driver disappeared just climbed one of the combination wood-steel parking guardrails and hung itself up. It was still idling. Judd carefully surveyed the situation. 4 cars had lined bumper to bumper from the wall at the end of the line where he had parked. He extended back to where he needed to back up. Vicky, he said, do you think if we could get all 4 those cars pushed back, I could get out of the parking spot? I don't know, she said. Let's walk it off and measure it. There was a gap between the last of those 4 cars and a smashed-up mess behind them. The question was the gap wide enough for all 4 cars? Measuring it with their steps, Judd and Vicky came to the conclusion there was room for the 4 cars, but not room for Judd to back out. He would have to do it in several moves if he could do it at all. They had to try. We'll just have to take them one at a time, Judd said. He peered into the window of the last car in line. There were no clothes on the seat. The engine was off, but the keys were still in the ignition. This must have been someone who panicked and ran off, he said. Lucky for us, they left their keys. Judd started the engine and backed the car up as far as possible. He slowly maneuvered it until it tapped the first car in its way. The next car is still running, Vicky shouted. Back it up here, Judd said. I've never driven, Vicky said. You'd better do it. Judd jogged up and opened the door, quickly realizing why Vicky didn't even want to try. This car was full of empty clothes. In the driver's seat was a woman's suit. Her shoes were on the floor. Atop the clothes were her glasses, necklace, earrings, and something that appears to have fallen from her hair. As usual, Judd found dental fillings. On the floor near the shoes were the woman's watch and rings. Judd smelled perfume. He held his breath. Not wanting to step on her belongings, he gathered them up and set them between the 2 front seats. On the passenger side, a man's suit and his belongings were draped where he had sat. Judd glanced in the back seat where 2 people who had been sitting close and left everything but flesh and bone. That gave Judd the willies, but he had to do whatever he had to do. He depressed the brake, shifted from drive into reverse, and backed the car out of the way. The next car had its formerly lone occupant's clothes on the seat behind the wheel. Judd tossed these into the passenger's side and kicked the shoes out of the way. The car was in drive and the key was on, but it had run out of gas. I'm going to need your help here, Vicky, he said. I'm going to shift this into neutral, and I'm going to need you to steer it while I try to push it back into those other ones. I really don't want to be in that car with those clothes, Vicky said. Anyway, I've never driven. This isn't driving, Judd said. You'll just be keeping it straight till it touches that car back there. Please, I really don't want to do this. Well, what do you suggest? How are we going to get out of here if you don't help me? Let me push, she said. You steer. We can try, Judd said, but I don't think you can realize how heavy this car is. I'm pretty strong. Suit yourself. Try it. Judd put the car in neutral and Vicky climbed atop the hood. She put her feet on the trunk of the car and wedged herself between the 2 cars. She pushed with all of her might, trying to roll the car backward. It wouldn't budge. Judd opened the door and put his foot on the floor to help push that way. Nothing. I'm bigger than you are, Vicky. Let me try pushing while you steer. I told you I'm not getting in that car, and I'm not. Think of something else. There is nothing else. What are we supposed to do? Just make sure the wheels are straight, Judd, that we can both push. So what if it hits those cars back there? It's not going to move unless we push both push it anyway. Judd couldn't argue with that. Without the engine running, the power steering did not work. Straightening the wheels of that car was like driving a truck with no power steering at all. It took all of Judd's might to get the wheels to turn a couple of inches. He had to keep getting out of check whether they were lined up. When they were straight, he joined Vicky at the bumpers between the cars. With both of them putting their entire weight and muscle between the cars, the one finally made it slowly roll. Within seconds, they had picked up a little speed, and Judd and Vicky dropped down from their perch on the second car. Judd ran to the driver's side and whipped open the door, feeling the tremendous weight and momentum of the vehicle. As near the car behind it, Judd jumped in. But before he could apply the brake or shift into park, the car smashed in the grille of the vehicle behind it. Now there was barely enough room left between that car and the one pressed up against the wall near Judd's. What tricky problem might that offer? Judd noticed the front tires of the last car were turned sharply to the left. There were no clothes in the seat, no keys in the ignition, and the doors were locked. This was obviously being driven by someone who had just started to turn left toward the exit when he was hit from behind that other car. So he just left, Vicky said. Wouldn't you have? You get hit by a car from behind and plow into the cement wall. You get out to see what happened, and the car behind you gets hit, and the car behind that one gets hit. There are no drivers in the middle 2 cars, only clothes. The driver of the last car runs off, leaving his keys in it. What would you do? I guess I might have to turn mine off, take my keys, lock my doors too, Vicky admitted. I'm going to have to break the window to get into this car, Judd said. I don't know much about cars. I'm going to have to break the window to get into this car, Judd said. I don't know much about cars, Vicky said. But what good will do you to get into that car if the keys aren't there? Good point, Judd said. But somehow I got to get this car out of the way if we're going to get out of this parking lot. Judd and Vicky stood surveying the situation, sizing up the possibilities. There's no way you're going to be able to back out of your space without at least clipping the bumper of that car, Vicky said. Do you think your car could push that one out of the way a little bit? You still have a tough time backing out and getting around it, but maybe your only chance. No harm in trying, Judd said. I can't think of anything else. Judd told Vicky to line herself up near the crashed car and try to guide him with hand signals so he would come as close to missing it as possible. If he had to hit it, he'd hit it. If he had to hit it hard, he'd do that too. Whatever it took to push it out of the way, that was what he had to do. Judd got into his car and started the engine. He looked into his rearview mirror and didn't see Vicky. He looked at the mirror on the door and saw her standing there, motioning him to start backing out. He pretended to busy himself with something else in the car on the seat. He had to stall. If it wasn't that he didn't want to do this, it was just he was suddenly overcome with a feeling of such sadness and loneliness and grief that he could barely move. What was it about merely being inside the car with Vicky outside that made him feel so alone? It was almost as if he were in a trance. He still longed for this to be a bad dream, but he knew it wasn't. He was tired, he wanted to lean over and put his head on the passenger seat and close his eyes. He fought tears. He fought drowsiness. He heard Vicky call out, "Okay, okay, Judd." He waited and shifted into reverse. Judd slowly began to back out, carefully watching Vicky's signals. She made a circular motion with her index finger, and he turned the wheel. It was the wrong way. She quickly reversed the motion. He felt this car nudge the one next to him. He pulled Black in and straightened out, taking another shot at it. This time he turned the other way, and she signaled him that the whistle was within inches of the crashed car behind him. He rolled down his window. "No way to clear it?" he asked. "No way," she said. "Let me get a line on it then," he said. "I want to have the straightest shot of that bumper I can get into this small space." "Back straight up for where you were then," Vicky said. When Judd did, the bumper of his car finally nudged the car in the way. "I'm going to go back up to the guardrail now," he said. "Let me know if I get out of line." Judd edged forward slowly. At one point, Vicky said, right. Judd feathered the steering wheel to the right. "Perfect," Vicky said. "As soon as you touch the guardrail, you're right in line." "You'd better get out of the way then," Judd said. "I'm going to have to ram it." He waited until Vicky was clear. With the seatbelt fastened, Judd took a deep breath, grimaced, and closed his eyes. He floored the accelerator. With a squeal of tires, a crash, and a scraping, the blocking car was driven out of the way. Vicky yelped, and Judd didn't know if it was out of fear or excitement. Whichever, the little plan succeeded, at least for the moment. She jumped into the passenger side and buckled herself in. Judd was able to back out of his parking space behind the car he had just pushed and had to keep bumping it to give him room to get around it and head toward the exit. Once he did that, he has a fairly clear shot past the pay booths and into the gridlock of traffic that appeared to have moved hardly an inch since this whole ordeal had begun. Vicky put her hand on Judd's arm. He stopped about 6 feet back of where emergency crews were still trying to extricate the idling blazer from the guardrail. "It looks clear," Judd said. "I'm sure we can get past." "I know," she said. "Just thought maybe you should thank God for helping us get out of here." Judd nodded and bowed his head, wondering if she meant he should pray aloud, or if she was going to, or what. When she said nothing, he began. "Lord, thanks." We didn't know what to. A nearly defeating engine roar and high-pitched squeal made Judd jump, and he looked up just in time to see the workers driving out of the way of the blazer. It had been lodged into the guardrail at a crazy angle. Apparently, someone decided to set something on the accelerator and shift into gear, while others had to rock it free. Whatever they had lodged against the gas pedal had made the engine race at top speed. 3 wheels spun crazily, causing the screeching with the 4th bit deep into the rail. The blazer shuddered and shook, appearing as if it might explode. The tire sent smelly smoke everywhere. As Judd and Vicky watched, the stuck tire somehow dislodged at the blazer nose first to the low concrete ceiling with a horrific crash. All 4 wheels now burning rubber, the empty blazer hit the floor, bouncing and creaking into the cars around it. The 4-wheel drive vehicle lurched directly in front of Judd, slamming the next guardrail and flipped forward, landing atop the last car he had moved. It drove the roof of that car all the way to the seat and rested atop the wreckage, tires still racing. The worker sprinted to the crash, and one reached in to turn off the engine. Judd sat there with his mouth open. He turned to look at Vicky, whose eyes were wide and unblinking. "We could have been killed," she said. "If that happened a couple of minutes ago, we would be dead for sure. Just think we had gone here earlier," Judd said, "hadn't received Christ yet." Now Judd knew exactly how to pray, and there was no awkwardness or wondering how to begin. There was a certain sense of freedom in being able to drive with even those few yards from the tangled garage into the stalled traffic, but Judd knew they wouldn't be getting far very fast that night. To him, this traffic jam was just like his new life. He knew where he was going, but he had no idea how he was going to get there or when. So yeah, that's chapter 4 of the second book of Left Behind the Kids series, Second Chance, Ordeal at O'Hare. And take care, everybody. Another video from my Storytime channel. Take care.